Fine, drop it. Off to a great start. It is a power panel and very excited. I'm here, of course, but also Maz Jobrani back.
Happy to be back.
Host of the Back to School podcast, and you're also touring.
I'm on, so the podcast is called Back to School with Maz Jobrani. People should listen. And the tour, I'm all over the US, so just go to mazjobrani.com. I'm in Burbank this weekend, DC next weekend, Atlanta after that. Is gonna go on and on and on. The kids go to private school. I got to keep going.
Yeah.
I'm never going to see my kids, but they can keep going to school.
And all of those dates are available at mazjobrani.com.
Yes.
And Jayar Jackson.
I'm also
less shocking that you're here, but we're still glad.
Yeah, it's shocking, but I'm also touring. I'm going from home to work, and after work, I'm going back home. And then I do see my kid all the time.
Yeah. Maybe if you make a play date with my kids, you can send me a video and I can see my kids.
It'll work out great.
Yeah. That's a good idea. That would save them a lot of effort.
Yeah.
We have got an awesome hour for you. The next hour is gonna be great too. Anna's gonna be here, Matha, Jason Carter. It's gonna be great. 2 great hours for you. But there's so much to get to. You know what? I wanna make sure we get to everything, so why don't we jump right into it? Trying to get Republican senators to take this impeachment trial seriously seems like sort of a waste of time and an impossible task. But last night, Adam Schiff did his best. We're gonna show you a bit of what he had to say. Here is the first section, which has gotten a pretty favorable response so far.
Colonel Vindman said, "Here right matters. Here right matters." Well, let me tell you something. If right doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how good the Constitution is. It doesn't matter how brilliant the framers were. If right doesn't matter, we're lost. If the truth doesn't matter, we're lost. Framers couldn't protect us from ourselves if right and truth don't matter. And you know that what he did was not right, but here right is supposed to matter. It's what's made us the greatest nation on earth. This is why, if you find him guilty, you must find that he should be removed. Because right matters. Because right matters. And the truth matters. Otherwise, we are lost.
Okay, so there's definitely gonna be more. We have more video. We also have a few of his other quotes. But from that, what do you think so far? Was that an effective appeal? Is there any chance it'll get through to any of the Republicans?
Well, the right has never mattered for them from the beginning. From day one when he said, I grabbed them by the bum. I mean, they were like, well, you know, it was a while ago and he just said it and let's move on. And then every time something happens, pulls out of the Paris Climate Accords, deregulation and the environment's getting worse, or pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, or whatever. Anything this guy has done, they've always found a way to excuse it, and they do the whataboutism of it all. So I was listening to a senator today being interviewed, and he said, well, I'm not sure, I haven't heard anything new. I've already heard all this stuff before. And if they really want witnesses, then there should be a quid pro quo. We should be able to call our witnesses for their witnesses. And then you make the argument of, well, the Bidens have nothing to do with this specific case. If you want to try them separately, go try them separately, do something else. But in this case, we're saying that this president did something that was wrong, and it should matter for every American. It should matter. And I run into issues all the time. I have friends of mine who argue, well, you guys, this is a political thing. You guys are politicizing it. What about all the good stuff he's done? They go, what about he lowered the taxes? I go, well, he's heightened my anxiety. Every morning I wake up and look at the news to see who we're going to war with. So right does matter, and it is about, look, they all know from the beginning, they all know the guy's a scumbag. They all know the guy is a narcissist. They all know all this stuff, but they've just put their heads in the sand, and it seems like they continue to. And I was thinking about this, the only way I think anything can change in this trial is if these types of videos get out enough to influence enough people in the purple states to start calling their senators and going, yo, you're gonna lose your seat if you don't vote for witnesses and more evidence.
I think that is the key here, because I don't think Adam Schiff or anyone else, any of the House managers that are pursuing this, that have been speaking for the last few days about this, are actually trying to convince any of the Republicans in the Senate. I mean, it started from the beginning that there was these few that were supposed to be potentially hanging on. The Susan Collinses, the Murkowskis, and the potential Romneys are supposed to be holding on at some point, potentially even just for the sake of witnesses, not even to vote, obviously, that he's guilty of these obvious crimes. But, so the point is here, Adam Schiff, he took like a courtroom appearance, and you're trying to convince the jury of like the public, rather than the jury of these senators, because we already know where they stand. They've said it openly and brazenly. So now what you have to do is try and put them in this position where they're rejecting what we're obviously and specifically putting forward, which has been detailed to a T here, and now they're on the hook for backing up someone who's done these things that are quite obvious. What frustrated me all the time was these Democrats have this cheery mood about impeachment. What happened to them being somber, and it's supposed to be a dark moment for America. I hope we skip by that eventually and just go, this is the problem. And you saw the emotion that was potentially building up with Adam Schiff, and honestly, I don't care whether or not it's real or not, which is gonna be something else I'm sure people will be upset about or accuse him of not being real on. Is it true? Are these facts? Should you maybe be emotional about this? Do you care about the country? Or are you just kind of floating through, going through your partisan debates and saying, well, I'm a Republican, so he must be right? Or do you actually care about the country?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the line's being drawn, and Adam Schiff's doing a great job doing it.
Yeah. I was reading some articles about his remarks, because there were a lot of articles written about it. And one, I apologize, I don't remember the exact source, but it said after he concluded his remarks, it really appeared to have shook some of the Republicans in attendance. And I thought, no, you need to provide some evidence of that, some receipts. What are you talking? Shook them? Like Susan Collins was just like sitting back, like, what have I done? What have I become?
Yeah.
No, they're not doing that. And look, the fact that Donald Trump gets away with saying and doing everything he wants bothers me more than any other individual politician. But as a general rule, nobody admits when their person has done anything wrong, said anything wrong, is wrong on something. Like, think about the most obvious disqualifying things that have happened that haven't really disqualified people, like Trump, the entertainment, the Entertainment Tonight bus, Access Hollywood. Sorry, thank you. Access Hollywood. That it shook a few, but he still ended up getting tons of votes. Roy Moore, like they kind of turned against him a little bit. And honestly, on the Democratic side as well, like, okay, they pressured Al Franken to step down, but if they didn't know that a Democrat was going to replace him, would they have done that either? Like, when the stakes are, we lose if we turn on this person, we never turn on the person, no matter how horrible or abhorrent what they did is.
Well, somebody was pointing out that this is, I think, the first time maybe either in history or in modern times where you have the party that the president is, his own party is the jury.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It's really hard. I heard Mitt Romney when this news first broke, and Mitt Romney was one of the only senators who said, "I'm concerned. I want to hear about this." And somebody asked me, said, "Why aren't other senators concerned?" He said, "Well, because there's one party that has the power, and there's another party trying to get the power." And he goes, "The party that has the power ain't gonna give it up." And so you're absolutely right. That does make sense. But that said, we are in such a situation where I think there's some short-sightedness. I'm always struck by how short-sighted strategically some politicians think. I thought it was short-sighted when we went to war with Iraq, because they weren't thinking about how that's just gonna give Iraq to control, more control to Iran in that region. I thought it was short-sighted when they, shot Soleimani, because Soleimani was a bad guy, but they didn't think about the repercussions. And the same thing happens here. There's a short-sightedness because this guy clearly, when you have these witnesses coming in, and we all saw those witnesses, and a lot of them were, appointed by Republicans, and they're in there saying this is all very alarming. A lot of them were saying, never in my 30, 40 years of doing this have I ever seen something like this. Well, you know what? This is going to come back and haunt you if you don't. If the roles get reversed and you get a Democratic president who does some stuff, and you have a Democratic Senate, it's very easy for them to go, well, you guys did it, so we're gonna do it. And we're setting a bad precedent. It's not, I wish we could all just come and agree to, because I think what happens is obviously you have the power, you wanna keep the power. Listen, if Pence becomes president, they still have the power. Obviously they don't have as much of a cult-like following as Trump does. But I wish we could all just agree on this person being someone who's breaking the laws, that is a bad person. And I mean, even if they came, the Republican senators came in and said, look, I don't like the guy, he's done a lot of bad things, but we still, we need him, so I'm going to vote for him to stay in power. At least I would say, wow, this guy's got integrity. He's putting it out there.
About it.
Yeah. We do have a little bit more of Adam Schiff here. He's talking about what Donald Trump's commitment to Rudy Giuliani, what that actually represents, why that's a threat to America.
This is why he needs to be removed. Donald Trump chose Rudy Giuliani over his own intelligence agencies. He chose Rudy Giuliani over his own FBI director. He chose Rudy Giuliani over his own national security advisors. When all of them were telling him this Ukraine 2016 stuff is kooky, crazy Russian propaganda, he chose not to believe them. He chose to believe Rudy Giuliani. That makes him dangerous to us, to our country. Why would anyone in their right mind believe Rudy Giuliani over Christopher Wray? Because he wanted to, and because what Rudy was offering him was something that would help him personally. And what Christopher Wray was offering him was merely the truth. What Christopher Wray was offering him was merely the information he needed to protect his country and its elections. But that's not good enough. What's in it for him? What's in it for Donald Trump? This is why he needs to be removed.
So look, I think as a general rule, just assuming that anything you hear from one of the heads of an intelligence agency can go really, really wrong. But if the alternative is Rudy Giuliani's opinion, probably don't go with Giuliani on that. But the thing is, it was all too convenient. What Trump was hearing for a year and a half from Giuliani and Parnas and Fruman, as we're gonna go over a little bit later on, it doesn't have to be true or not. Like anything that America loses in pursuit of these investigations or anything, it doesn't hurt him. He doesn't seem to care about that. He really can just divorce his own interests from the interests of the country or its people and say, well, if there's any benefit to me personally, it doesn't matter if there ends up being some sort of negative effects on Ukraine or if it injures diplomacy between the US and Ukraine. That really wouldn't matter. I mean, I think all politicians are probably too easily, like when the balance is their personal interest and the national interest, they'll side with themselves. But Donald Trump is perhaps the worst example of that I can think of.
I've always said it, when we were doing, when the primaries were happening, even general election, and you find out who Donald Trump is. And I say this with any election. Whenever something salacious or disgusting or revealing comes out about any candidate, you have, whether you like it or not, what happened in the past, or you have to ask yourself, how does this relate to how they're gonna be a leader if they get elected? So the whole time when things were coming out about Trump, his character, his egomaniacal ways, his selfishness, his disregard, his bankruptcies, his lack of business skill, all that comes into play not because we hate him. That's what they kept saying, because we hate, by the way, I hate him. But that's not because, the reasons people hate him is not just because of those shortcomings in his life. It's because that transfers into bad policy. So when he talks about national security, he's so selfish because he's thinking national security is Trump security. How can I protect myself? American prosperity is Trump prosperity. We've seen how much he's put money in different places for himself and his family. Domestic policy, it's Trump policy. Trump doesn't care about getting rid of Planned Parenthood, about being pro-life, all that stuff. He's never cared about that. That's domestic policy that's gonna help him get reelected for his own gratification. And foreign relations, what does he do with every foreign relation thing he does? When it came from Kim Jong-un to the things with Soleimani in Iran, it's how can I project myself to be better than Obama? Hey, Obama didn't do anything with Kim Jong-un. Obama didn't do anything with Iran. I did. It's self-promotion. None of it has anything to do with the country. He doesn't mention anyone else until it has to do with him. This is the basis for how he does. We saw this when he ran. That's why what we saw as he ran transfers into how he is as a president, which is a horrible one, because he's self-centered and he's supposed to be a representative of the country. Instead, he only represents himself. Therefore, he'll destroy everyone else for himself.
Well, you know, he did actually say in the RNC in his speech, he said, "Only I can save us," or whatever he said. Only I can make that be the person to solve our problems. And that, as you just said, is not a leader. That is a dictator. That is someone who says, you need me to solve this, as opposed to saying, we can do this together. Now, going back to what Schiff was saying about Rudy Giuliani, I think he makes a good point. I'm actually concerned, you know, as people, I have relatives, and the older they get, the crazier stuff they start saying, and they become hardcore conspiracy theorists. You don't want a leader to be a conspiracy theorist, much less to have his advisors be conspiracy theorists. So you get you get Giuliani and Trump in a room together. I don't know what kind of stuff they're saying to each other, but it's one of those things where, like, if you're at that Thanksgiving dinner and you just take your brother or sister aside, you go, hey man, does grandpa still have everything? Is he losing his mind? And what about his friend? His friend is saying some crazy stuff. And that's who these two people are. I honestly am concerned, not because just of the stuff they've done, but because of the sanity of their minds. I mean, I really think that these guys do believe that a lot of this stuff is happening or it happened. They have convinced themselves, because you're right. On the one hand, you sit there and you go, there's a sinister thing where they go, if we can prove that the server was the Ukrainians, then it shows that the Ukrainians were trying to help the Democrats and the Russians never helped us, therefore we won on our own. But I also feel that they really do believe this stuff.
Yeah. Well, coming up in the second hour, we're gonna have some video of Rudy Giuliani on Fox and Friends, and they try to help him keep a hold on reality. And you can see the frustration on all three of the Fox and Friends from just having to talk to Rudy Giuliani and hear what he thinks about the world. With that though, we are gonna take our first break though. Lots more to get to after this.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you wanna get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to our power panel. A couple of quick member comments before we get back into it. Disappointed Marlon Bundo says, "Yay for Maz! I love seeing him on the show."
Thank you.
So you've got a disappointed rabbit who's very happy to see you.
All right.
Zach said, "Finally bought my TYT membership. I may be over 100K in debt, but I think this purchase is well worth it." Well, thank you for that, and good luck, because that's rough. Although I do have friends from college who are similarly in debt. Vincent Maskey said, "Schiff needs to ask the Senate, why are they protecting this president? Why are they not allowing the evidence to come forward?" I agree. If we take it as a given that he is not going to be removed from office and that we are merely getting the Republicans on the record defending him, we need to make that as effective and sticky going forward as possible, I think. Tom Zawacki says, "When are we going to come out with TYT ties? I feel like Iadarola is being discriminated against again." I think so. I agree. And that boy's hell on Turlitz says, "Watching the news during the Trump years is like watching a long, unfunny season of Seinfeld." That does seem rough. By the way, one other thing before we jump back into it, I did want to let you know that if you are a fan of dinners and of dinners with interesting people, we've got an offer for you. It's a sweepstakes from Aspiration, where you can be flown out to LA to have dinner with Jank and Anna and myself, and all you have to do to make that happen is go to tyt.com/dinner in LA to register to win. You sign up for a free Aspiration spend and save account. You have to register your eligibility for the actual sweepstakes. So you need the account and then you need to sign up. And then every time you swipe your Aspiration card, that will be an entry into the sweepstakes, and you might end up having dinner with us out in Los Angeles. And along the way, you're also gonna be doing right by both your values and your money. So it's a big win-win, like everything that we work with Aspiration on. So with that, why don't we jump back into it?
Let's jump back in.
Okay. ABC News found apparently a tape involving Donald Trump back in 2018 talking about then Ambassador to Ukraine Marie Yovanovitch and talking about his desire to get rid of her in very graphic language, saying, get rid of her, get her out tomorrow, I don't care, get her out tomorrow, take her out, okay? Do it. And they apparently are fairly confident that the audio tape is of President Trump. Apparently that recording was made April 30th, 2018 at a dinner at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. Now we don't know everyone who is sort of heard a little bit on the tape, but we do know that Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, two men that he totally doesn't know, as we'll get to, were talking to him about Yovanovitch as he's saying she needs to be taken out.
The more we find out about this, the more it becomes Sopranos season 9 or whatever that next season would have been. I mean, I think he's grown up, in New York around these mobsters. I think he talks like them. I think that we have empowered this really unhinged beast in a way, and he's thrown around orders like that. I mean, it's amazing because even if he wanted to fire her and he had some etiquette and he had some level of intelligence, you would think he would hold it down. And then on the way out, he'd be, hey, Rudy, can I talk to you for a second? Get rid of her. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like that. Not throwing, I mean, I saw the interview with Lev Parnas and he said he was like just basically throwing it out to a few people here and there.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know if you guys listened to those interviews. I totally expected that for the pictures I'd seen of Parnas, I expected him to have like, Russian accent and talking like very much like Steinbeck. But he seemed very reasonable. I was listening, he was very calm. He's like, yeah, and this happened, that. No accent, and also just very calm about it all and very believable.
He sounded more rational and put together than I would have thought a person who regularly had dinners with Rudy Giuliani would.
Yeah, and his hairstyle usually shows him to be.
Exactly.
It gave you reason to think that.
Yeah.
It's the reason I think Maz is because Trump still thinks he's on The Apprentice. He has to say, you're fire, and do the finger point and all that stuff. He thinks that's what gets him somewhere because again, he's consistently performing. He's consistently selling himself. He's consistently making himself think that everyone's there to bow down and cater to him. So he's like, I gotta let them know that I'm powerful and strong. I'm sure many people have had a boss like this who just has, instead of just saying something, has to say it in a way that demeans other people and lets them know to put them in their place. And that's the kind of person he is. So no matter what, that we've said before also with other Lev Parnas interviews, you can hear him through the phone. Many people have said they've heard him through the phone. He and Giuliani are like this. When they're talking to someone, they're screaming in phones for some reason. I don't know if they can't hear, but it has to be in the nature that everyone hears what I'm saying, and I'm saying it this way because I mean it, damn it. And that's their approach.
You know what, you're right, and I think as you get older, like I'm getting older, as you get older, your insecurities get more and more, especially when you come from a guy like him who, when he was a young dude, playboy, he thought he had it all, and already he was cocky and had all that stuff going. As you get older, I think you have choices. He's kind of the opposite of, some people get older and they get wiser, and you meet some people, you know what I'm saying? You meet, I sometimes, my wife does hot yoga, I go once in a while, and there's some people that are just so at peace and older and just, yes, namaste, and hey, nice to see you. They're very humble, and they realize they've accepted their age, and they're just gonna be graceful about it. This guy's the opposite of that, and I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think he needs to belittle people around him to boost himself up.
Those old people have humility. So when they find they've done something wrong or they are wrong or need to make a life change or anything to be at peace, they're like, I can accept that. I can change myself. Instead of the stubborn type who are like, no, I don't care what mistakes I made. I'm never gonna admit to them. I'm definitely never gonna change.
Yeah, and let's recognize the difference between wanting to seem strong and actually being strong. Donald Trump is the sort of guy that when he's in a group of people that doesn't involve the person he wants to fire, he'll be talking about, take her out, get rid of her, I can do whatever I want. But remember, how has he fired every high profile person in his administration? When they are halfway around the globe. They get a text message or a tweet that shows that they've been fired. Because what he is not is strong. A strong person could sit across a table from a person and say, look, this is why we have to cut ties with you. He doesn't do that. He waits till like whoever is, like Rex Tillerson is on a trip trying to do some damage control for Trump, or others have found out literally from a tweet that they've been fired because he's not actually strong. He just desperately wants a group of his goons to think that he's strong. But importantly, the actual content of the tape, pretty rough, but more importantly, it's the context of it, which is that he's having dinner back in 2018 with these individuals that he swears he hasn't talked to. So you put together a mashup of all of the times he claims he doesn't know the person that he's talking about like staffing decisions with at an intimate dinner gathering. Here's a bit of that montage.
Lev Parnas has come forward and said that you knew everything that he was doing in Ukraine.
He's a con man. Okay,
so
ready?
you're
Let me
saying
answer
that's
that
not
one.
true?
I don't know him. Well, I don't know him. I don't know Parnas.
I don't know those gentlemen.
I don't know him at all. Don't know what he's about. Don't know where he comes from. Know nothing about him.
So I don't know anything about him.
No, I don't know him. I know nothing about him.
I don't know them.
I don't know him. I don't believe I've ever spoken to him.
Parnas, I don't know.
I had never had a conversation that I remember with him.
I don't know about them. I don't know what they do.
I don't need the help of a man that I never met before.
But
Quiet.
sort of like a groupie. He shows up at fundraisers.
I guess he attended fundraisers. I guess I had pictures taken.
It's possible I have a picture with him. I was taking pictures with hundreds of people.
Thousands and thousands of pictures with thousands of people.
I have a picture with everybody.
So I take a picture with him.
I take pictures.
I take pictures with people.
I have pictures with everybody.
Yeah, you don't have multiple dinners with people who've given you significant amounts of money. And the thing is, you could say, well, it's over the course of a couple of years, he has dinners with a lot of people, you should forget, but he's also the person who regularly brags about having some sort of mutant memory. It's called like up here and everything, remember?
That's right.
He always seems to forget things though.
The solution is for him to say, because if you look at his eyes on a lot of those things, he averts his eyes as well. So you can tell that he's lying. So the solution, I think, for him would be to say, look, he's an acquaintance. I've seen him at some events. We've shook hands, but I don't know what he was doing specifically. And at that point, you go, okay, well, because maybe he wasn't. I mean, he probably was. But if you want to really throw Rudy Giuliani under the bus, I think that's the way to do it. To go, look, I've met the guy a few times because the pictures keep coming up, videos come up. They're laughing together. I mean, again, that's not, that's not 100% of the proof because I do stand-up comedy. I meet probably 1/1,000,000th of the people you have to meet when you're president. And there's pictures of me with people, hey, what's up, da 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 da. I don't know that person, but this is continuous several times.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
in places like that.
Yeah, and they're not just in line next to each other at the buffet at a big event. Like they're talking about which ambassadors are going to be fired. That's a very specific sort of conversation. It undercuts his arguments that have been made about why he made the decision to fire her, and it lays out effectively what looks like a multi-year plot involving her and Ukraine. And so, him claiming that, well, it's just, I had some concerns about corruption. No, you were tied in with people who were trying to get something done there. It really does seem like this is now laying out a timeline that looks really damning to him, as we already know, but this is just more evidence to that effect. And also specifically, I just want to remind you, when he's talking about get rid of her, take her out, okay, do it. Remember, the people he eventually dispatches there are bringing people like Robert Hyde, people who we can bring up some of these text messages. You might recall when Parnas released a whole bunch of documents, there were documents of Robert Hyde saying that effectively he was implying that he was stalking this woman, that they were talking about having an inside man. And the guys over there asked me what I would like to do and what's in it for them. Perhaps to get rid of her, okay, do it, take her out. They're joking about possibly assassinating this woman. Now, him making sort of mobster-esque comments a year earlier, that doesn't prove anything necessarily, but he surrounds himself with people who apparently have taken the next step towards really doing something, and that is pretty spooky.
Absolutely, and Yovanovitch just said, I mean, you really got to go to the person in that case as well and say, how did this stuff make you feel? Because if she realized that, because these guys are claiming that they were joking around, and if she really felt that, oh, this was funny stuff, she might have said, I heard about it and I knew there was a couple of bozos and that was it. And I know the president throws threats around all the time, so that was it. No, she has said that she was told, what was it? That she had like 24 hours or something that said, you should get out of here. You could be in danger. And then he tweeted at her when she was being. When she was testifying in front of Congress.
Yeah.
So the guy keeps doing it, and that goes to this whole thing of where, I don't care whose side you're on, but if one of my friends is belligerent and keeps picking fights with people and starts threatening people to the point where I'm going, wow, that's crossed the line. Someone's got to step up. A Mike Pompeo or somebody, they're not going to.
They're not going to.
But they need to step up and go, look, this language is not appropriate, blah, blah, blah. Once in a while, someone will make a little bit of a suggestion. But I'm not holding my breath. It's heartbreaking to see it. And all you can hope for is that somehow these clips that we're getting from these hearings find their way in front of enough people so that when the elections happen, we can vote this guy out and move forward.
If not, in this case, these potential audio tapes give credence to the storyline that he was out to get people out of the way that weren't on his side, or that we've heard how many times he wants loyalty and wants people to, I can't believe they went behind my back. He wants people, and he said it openly, people from even up Justice Department. They're supposed, Jeff Sessions wasn't on his side enough. He's not supposed to work for you directly to protect you from people discovering the things that you're doing wrong. That's not their job. So when he found and he discovered people within administration or even within just any parts of government that weren't gonna be that person, this one being Yovanovitch, even back in 2018, he's like, we gotta get her out of the way. And they've denied that that's why he wanted to get her out of the way, so he can continue to do lawlessness. And he's like, well, Ukraine, that's where I wanna do some work. She's in my way.
Yeah, I know some people, you might be watching this, you might be a Trump fan and think, well, I don't care about this. She was bad, he was strong, he got rid of her. Yeah, but that's one way to look at what just happened, but think about another one. All it took for Parnas and Fruman, who wanted her gone, all they had to do was sit next to him at dinner and say, she's talking smack about you, she doesn't like you, she thinks you're gonna get impeached. And he's like, well, get rid of her, get her out right then. Think about how dim-witted, how gullible you have to be that these people that on sight alone, Parnas and Fruman, you look at them and you know that they're sleazy scumbags, they can manipulate him into firing an ambassador with a couple of offhand comments. That is a person with pudding for brains who is incredibly powerful.
And there's reports of people within administration that start battles with him and someone that they disagree with. I forget the specific names, but there was two people who were disagreeing with the administration. They're like, well, if I just take Trump to the side and talk about that other person in a bad way with him, he'll start leaning negatively towards them. And then therefore he's gonna get my enemies within administration out of the way, because he's that easy to persuade.
It's not strength, it's weakness. Weakness,
everyone
obviously
knows
of body, but also
his
of mind.
allies know it.
Yeah, okay, well, why don't we move on to another story? We're gonna jump over to the Democratic primary. It is winter, which means that if you are not in LA with us, you might have bad weather. And if you're a campaign worker, one of these big campaigns in the early states, like in Iowa, like that can be dangerous. You're driving all over the place constantly, bad roads and all of that. It's bad news, and right now it's bad news for the Biden campaign because Ken Klippenstein, formerly of TYT, has a new report with some internal communications from the Biden campaign. So this is from back on December 30th. With Iowa then sheathed in snow, the Biden campaign instructed staffers that its inclement weather policy was being suspended, according to staff text messages that a staffer for the Biden campaign turned over to the nation. The policy had allowed them to avoid driving during potentially hazardous weather conditions, but at that busy time it was being called off. And here is the most damning message. This is from Kay Glad, Biden's regional organizing director for Iowa. It said, hey guys, all weather policies dissolved throughout the entire state because we have 5 weeks left until the election. If it feels like unsafe driving conditions, then talk to me separately. But quite frankly, I don't want to hear any complaints because you know how important this is and how much time we have left. She goes on to say, by showing an ability to be adaptable, flexible, and willing to presumably do what you've been hired to do, then that is the most basic threshold of demonstrating your ability of leading others. Every single day is an audition for post-Iowa. And that is Ken Klippenstein there. Who thankfully is not driving on icy Iowa roads. I think that this should obviously be unacceptable.
Okay, I'm willing to be persuaded by this, but my first thought is that this cannot be an original or
the first time
particular to the Biden campaign.
Right.
I'm guessing, but I would assume many campaigns are like, hey, we got 5 weeks left, drive in the snow. I don't know, or hey, I don't care, work those extra hours. Things that you probably shouldn't do to your staff, but they do it anyway. So I would normally see this and go, man, it'd be rough to work in these conditions. Like, there was those reports about Klobuchar, how she's angry at her staffers. Doesn't mean that she should no longer be a senator, just means, hey, maybe if you have an opportunity, you may not want to work for her because she might yell at you and you don't want to be in that position. So it's not that it's damning, it's just that more it's like uncomfortable to me. And I wouldn't put it so much as something where he would become this like crack the whip slave master type of person that's like hard on
none of
people
these messages
unnecessarily.
imply that he was involved
Right,
in this
yeah, that
decision.
too. Now, there's one line that did stick out to me from Kay Glad, the regional organizing director. She goes, if it feels like unsafe, then you should talk to me. But quite frankly, I don't want to hear it. So which one is it? You should talk to me if it's really bad, but if you talk to me, I don't want to hear it. So don't talk to me.
Look, you're absolutely right. There's times when in whatever business you're in, it's crunch time and someone's gonna come through and say something like this, and you're right, it's inappropriate, especially when it's unsafe like this. My bigger question is, aren't we living in the time of technology? Like, isn't there a better way to do this than to have to get in cars and go knock on people's doors? And this whole system to me, but the whole system seems backwards to me. That these guys got to go to Iowa and they got to convince you, and then you're gonna go convince them, and you're gonna tell those people. I mean, it seems like, let's get online. I'm gonna be in my warm house. You can be in your warm house. Here's my pleading. Go ahead and vote. Let's do, I mean, especially when it's unsafe like this, because you're right. I mean, listen, people are, this is every point counts here. So you're gonna get people, I bet you're right. I bet you there's other campaigns that are saying it maybe not in a text or a message, maybe they're just doing it in a speech or something, going, guys, it's crunch time. We need everybody out there. If you need X, Y, and Z, let us know. Let's make this happen.
Look,
it might be in states like this in January. How about we stop starting in Iowa?
How about we start in California?
Where California and Hawaii next time. Those
40 million people. Let's start with us. We should make a difference with all this.
72 degrees today in Los Angeles. Come on.
I'm totally down for that. Alternatively, stronger unions for campaign workers and virtually every worker in America, I think would be good too.
Yes.
It might be possible that other campaigns are doing this. We have documentation for this one.
Right.
And thankfully, she was chastised and they've supposedly reversed this decision. That is a wise thing to do, especially considering that this is not just hypothetically dangerous, this is unsafe in a documented way. Apparently, there have already been 5 different car accidents among that campaign's Iowa staffers between Christmas and New Year's Day. So just for Biden, just in Iowa, they already had 5 accidents. Earlier in the cycle, a staffer for Elizabeth Warren died in a car accident. Back in 2016, a staffer for Ben Carson died in a car accident. It is dangerous because they have to do so much driving, which means there cannot be any room for, well, if you really want to show how dedicated you are, if you're auditioning for post-Iowa, you have to swallow down your fear that you could die in a car accident and go out there and do it anyway. That's not acceptable.
Once again, Skype. Very easy, just Skype.
I've always wondered that.
Just sit there and do your thing, and people can tune in. You can do your Q&A. Don't make people drive around. And by the way, I just realized the reason we can't do it in LA is because there's so much traffic. No one would ever get anywhere. You know what I'm saying? They'd be like, I tried to convince some people to vote, but I never got there, man.
I was trying to get from the valley to the west side. It took me 7 hours. Couldn't make it.
No, man.
Oh, jeez.
Inclement traffic.
Well, anyway, good job, Ken Klippenstein. Get out there, give him hell. Okay, we're gonna take another break. Yes, we are. When we come back, huge demonstrations in Iraq. We're gonna show you all about that after this.